Hey, welcome everybody. It is the Strategy Hacker live stream. Very excited to be here today. Hope everybody's feeling good. Lisa Schwab, welcome. And hey there, Frank Quinn, how are you? And Ken Weissman, glad to see you here. Thank you all for coming. Today is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope everybody can hear me today. We've had audio problems in the past. Let me know if you can hear me because I have no way to tell unless you tell me, which is kind of unusual. But anyway, good. Hello. Andy Marks, how are you? Welcome. Glad to see you here. Welcome, everybody. This is the Strategy Hacker live stream. It has replaced our digital skills workshop, which generally happens on Wednesdays, right about this time. I hope you all are having a great day, and I'm here to talk today about all kinds of stuff, and I want to answer your questions too. Elliot Klein, welcome. Andy Marks. Larry Samuels, how are you doing? We are really excited to be flexing a little bit of streaming muscle. It has been a long time coming, and we're just now starting to get, our minds together on what this is all going to be like. We're trying to figure out where video gaming ends, where streaming begins, where is in real life. We're working on a bunch of stuff and a bunch of technology, and I'm just happy to have all you here. Hey there, Stephen Catola, how are you? Deborah Dickman Powell, good to see you too. Welcome. Hey, Richard Hartman. I'm glad you can hear me. That's awesome. I'm happy to be heard. Very much so. Very happy to be heard. So let's just talk a little bit about some housekeeping. And again, I'd love to have your questions. So please in chat, don't be bashful. Happy to ask questions and interact as best as we can. Aldo Gugino, hey, how are you? This suggests to me that YouTube streaming should have some kind of audio confidence check. God knows. Last week was really funny. Hey there, David Charmats. How are you? What was crazy last week was the system I'm using can record and stream simultaneously, do both. And it's very happy to do both. I'm happy to have it do both. Set up the stream, had a 20-minute sort of lead up. Hey there, Scott Kernan. How are you? Don Levine. Good to see you here. And I hit record because I felt like I hit stream because I knew I was going to stream. Had 20 minutes, played Anthem, which was awesome. It was a song I did for the Parsons Dance Company. Wow, more than 20 years ago. I conducted the London Symphony Orchestra for it, and it was really super great as an experience. Hey, David Houle, how are you? Martin Fishman, good to see you. And it ended perfectly right at 3 o'clock, and I'm like, but I hit the record button, and the recording part of this particular system decided to take over with a whole different set of configuration. And for the first 5 minutes, I was trying to figure that out. So I'm glad that I did figure it out. Do a little housekeeping. Alexa Zinberg, welcome. Hey, James, how are you? So what we're going to do, just we'll talk a little bit about some stuff here. This is ShellyPalmer.com. If you haven't been to ShellyPalmer.com, we run a business. It's a technology, media, and marketing consulting practice, and we do help business leaders accelerate digital transformation. All the way at the bottom of ShellyPalmer.com, if you scroll way down, there's a subscribe button, and we put out an email every single day. It's a thought leadership pieces on Sunday. Hey there, Thomas Herman, how are you? We'll get to that question in 2 seconds. And anyway, we'd love to have you subscribe if you're so inclined. During the week, we put out news and information, top 5-6 stories of the day, and a little rant every morning. Hi, Kathy Aronson. Welcome from Los Angeles. And then on Sundays, I write a thought leadership piece, something about whatever is going on in the world, when it's going on in the world. And on Saturdays, I do a machine learning and AI weekend reading list, things that I think are interesting that happened during the week that you might have missed. So you can feel free to subscribe to ShellyPalmer.com, our Think About This newsletter. Today we're going to talk about the middle management error vendors love most. Hi, Pamela, how are you? Now, I am never going to get this name right. It looks like Asma, but I'm not sure. ASMAA. What a fantastic name. Can't figure out if that's your actual name or if it's just an abbreviation. But anyway, welcome. I apologize for making a mistake with the pronunciation, which I'm sure I did. Let's see. What else are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about pgx.tech. PGX.tech is a place you are all invited to. Joey is going to put a link that will get all of you into pgx.tech. It's a private social network. What we do there is pretty much what happens here. We talk about technology, media, entertainment, marketing, certain strategies for how to navigate this very dynamic environment that we're living in right now. But what you can do at pgx.tech also is meet all kinds of like-minded individuals. We try to keep the conversation very high level. It's not Facebook. It's not Twitter. It's not a place where people howl at the moon. It's a place where we're trying to drive the conversation forward. Conversation could be about 5G, could be about coronavirus, which obviously is a very big topic. I mean, whatever you want to be, whatever you want it to be about. PGX Tech is a place where you'll find a very curated list of over 3,000 professionals who are basically just trying to get through the day and are looking for a little extra help to do it. And I think you'll find it there. Hey, Greg Willis, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Okay, that's enough about pgx.tech. A lot of events are laid out there too, by the way. There's a bunch of stuff you can do there that's super fun on Mondays through Thursdays at 11:05 and 11:35. We have online networking salons. On Mondays, we do education tech and digital transformation. Then on Tuesdays, we do digital leadership and we do AI and machine learning. On Wednesdays, we have health and wellness tech, which we did this morning, and 5G and connectivity, which was a lively discussion this morning. And on Thursdays, we do media and entertainment tech and advertising and marketing. Those are really interesting 15-minute chunks of your day. It's literally 11:05 to 11:25 and then 11:35 to 11:55. And the first couple 3 minutes are just introductions. And the last minute's just a wrap up. There's roughly 15 solid minutes of water cooler conversation. And I hope that you will come and join us. You can go to shellypalmer.com/salons. Joey will put that in the chat for you, and you can sign up, and please join us Monday through Thursday, 11:05, 11:35. You are more than welcome. Jim Chase, how are you? Good to see you here. Steve Bradbury, welcome. Now, moving on. What I want to talk about today, I guess I have to do one more bit of shameless plugging while we let people show up today, because one more tiny bit of shameless plugging before we get serious about today's subject. If you go to courses.shellypalmer.com, you will find our brand playbook generator. You will find our My Life Plan roadmap template. But there's also like a whole bunch of free stuff here that you can get and download. The PG memo template's really fun. The SWOT analysis template, a couple articles about that stuff too. So please go to courses.shellypalmer.com at your leisure and absolutely feel free to download what's free and take advantage of some of the courses that are there. We were doing on Wednesdays all of the stuff about how to do that, how to build those courses, how to go direct to consumer and build direct to consumer product. Haroon, hello back from Turkey. Glad to have you here. Michael, you're not late. We're just starting. We're really just getting started. There are a couple news items today that were fascinating. Actually, big tech is under fire today in a way that they haven't been in a while. Big tech is getting yelled at on the Hill today, grilled on the Hill. And I know actually they're going to be asked the wrong set of questions by people who literally do not understand what's going on in the world in which we live. There's accusations of anti-conservative bias. There's accusations of all whatnot, all kinds of things that are supposed to be happening at big tech. And big tech is going to hide behind Section 230 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1996. They're going to hide behind that, which says that you can be a platform and not responsible for anything on your platform. Therefore, you cannot be sued. You are simply a conduit, which allows content to go from you. Franco, welcome from Argentina. The content goes from you to whoever, and you're just the pipes. You have nothing to do with anything. And this is a section of the code that Google and Facebook and Twitter And actually all big tech, all the elite tech distributors have hidden behind forever. Are you a publisher or are you a platform? That's the question. It's the main question that everybody asks. Are you a publisher or are you a platform? You certainly can weigh in here in chat if you'd like and tell me if you think Google and Facebook and Twitter are publishers or platforms. From my perspective, there are a couple things going on here we should discuss. One, what is an editor? Who edits and what is an editor? Well, an editor is somebody who imposes their editorial will on the content before you read it. And in fairness, all things are edited. You can't tell a story without editing it. If we go back all the way in time, as far back as you can go, someone runs into your village and they say, I have news, and they're screaming, and the louder they scream, the more interested people are, because people don't tend to scream every day. Hey there, Brian. Hey, welcome. And hi, Sai, how are you? So this person runs into the middle of town and starts screaming, I've seen something amazing. I've seen a burglary or a robbery in the other village. And you don't know if it's true or not, but you're compelled because someone's screaming. And then the story is told. Well, they were walking along the street and these guys jumped out of nowhere and stole the bag of rice, and now he doesn't have any rice. Is that exactly what happened? Well, it's what happened in the context of the person that is telling you the story, with the edits they decided to make, whatever they omitted, whatever they included. That story is editorialized immediately. It's what makes Twitter so interesting when you retweet, not when you tweet, right? Take a fact. Take a fact. So-and-so won the election. It's meaningless. You'll get that from anybody. That's a fact. So-and-so won the election. Taxes are going to go up. That's editorialized. It may not be true, but now there's something about that that's interesting. So-and-so won the election. After-school programs will be canceled. That's interesting too. But so-and-so won the election is just not that interesting. It happens to be a pure fact, but it's not that interesting unless you want to know who won the election. And then you'll have your own opinion about what that means. So what's editorial when it comes to the New York Times? What's editorial when it comes to the Washington Post or to the Wall Street Journal? What is editorial? And the answer is everything. Just picking up a fact and putting it into the newspaper or putting it online immediately comes with an editorial point of view. Immediately. Whether it's sin of omission, extra inclusion, or the actual rendering of opinion without couching it as opinion. So we have commentators, we have pundits, and then we have journalists who are trying to be fair and balanced, but they all have a point of view. Everyone has a point of view. Everybody. I have a point of view. We all do. They're going to go to Washington and they're going to be asked by the rule makers and the lawmakers, are you publishers or are you platforms? And they are going to argue that they are platforms. They simply take what is published and they put it out. They don't do the publishing. They don't touch the Washington Post content. They just put it out. They don't touch the Wall Street Journal content. They just put it out. They don't touch anybody's tweets. They just put them out. And they have standards and practices, truth in advertising so that we can't sell snake oil. They have political restrictions of some kind that are all published, and they're going to tell you that they've got certain guidelines and restrictions and policies, child pornography, regular pornography, what you can and can't show. They've got all that. But they're just a platform. They don't editorialize. And they're going to make that case, and they're going to make it well. And it's probably going to work. Probably going to work. Except it's not true. It's not even close to true. Because the moment that an algorithm touches that content, an editorial point of view is crafted. That editorial point of view, they're going to argue, is crafted by your behaviors. You behave a certain way, and they will send you the content in response to that behavior. They'll use an algorithm like birds of a feather. So, hi, Jonathan Carmel. So if someone that you're friends with or that you're associated with or that you're in a social graph with is looking at content, specific content, they're going to make the assumption that because you're in that social graph, that's content you might like, and they will surface it. That's just how it works over and over again. And I'm going to argue that if they understood the questions to ask, it would have nothing to do with are you a publisher or a platform. It would have to do with you are the data elite. You have data that will allow you to do things that no other organizations can do. We need to talk about why you need to collect that much data and why you have the right to use it when it has nothing to do with the interaction and or the services you're offering. You're using that data later to enrich yourselves, making us workers in the minds of Google and Twitter and Facebook, and enriching your shareholders. It has absolutely nothing to do with the editorial realities they're talking about. And if they want to impose some kind of editorial restrictions, they could make a good case for it. I've yet to see it. I've yet to hear it. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Thomas Herman, more fundamentally, the law shouldn't care if they're editors or not. The law should be rewritten to ignore why you're promoting disinformation or dangerous information. So, wow. You know, Thomas, I wasn't really thinking about, in this case, true or false disinformation or actual information. And the reason I wasn't thinking that way in the context of this conversation is that Section 230 is, are you responsible, period, for what goes on your platform, or aren't you? Either you're a publisher and you've got publishing responsibility, or you're a platform and you have no responsibility. So big tech is going for the no responsibility, or as little as humanly possible. And I think Congress is going to want to go the other way. They're going to say, you are responsible, you are responsible. I'm not sure it's the right argument. It's one of the arguments. I'm not sure it's the right argument. Algorithms are editors. End of story. How they get the data to make automated decisions about those editorial, how they make those editorial decisions algorithmically, where the data comes from, that's a much more problematic to me. Greg Wicke, how are you? Surveillance Economy is exactly right. There's a book by that title. Does anyone remember her name? I don't, at the moment, remember the author's name. It's a good book. It's a great book, actually, The Surveillance Economy, as I remember. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The book is called Surveillance Capitalism. Joe, you could look that up and throw that in chat. It got crazy boring to me in the middle, but I toughed it out and read the whole thing anyway. What I didn't like about the book is that she uses a lot of big words, even for me, and they seem to be big words for the sake of big words, and densely packed sentences of big words that kept saying the same thing over and over again. That's what I didn't like about the book. What I really liked about the book was the thesis about surveillance capitalism. And so, yeah, you definitely should. I read it a long time ago when it came out, and I just remember plodding through it. It's like, it's it's actually a tough read, but it's a good read, and you know, force yourself. It'll be good for you. Sort of like taking cough medicine. You just sort of have to read it. There are plenty of books on this subject, and I'm not the end-all authority, and your opinions matter too. And what I would say is, these are our elected officials. We live in a republic, right? This is a democratic republic. We elect our leaders. They make our decisions for us. If you have an opinion about Section 230 and you haven't spent the time to understand what this particular regulation says, what it means to you, and what the outcome of these conversations on the Hill what ramifications will have for you, do yourself a favor. Take a few minutes and figure it out. Like, it's all, you can Google this, and there are plenty of points of view. You can view this through Shoshana Zuboff. Thanks, Jonathan Carmel. That's exactly right. Good book. I remember it being a good book. I just thought it was hard, really plotting. You need to understand this subject, and you need to be an expert in it, because we live in the information age, and information is the currency of the realm. It is as much a currency as cash. The disinformation that we're dealing with right now is profound. There's a wonderful term coined by Stephen Colbert, wikiality. He also coined the term truthiness, both of which I've used in articles. I think I have an article that talks about truthiness and wikiality more than once. The beautiful thing about the word wikiality is that it's Stephen Colbert's approach to, if everyone believes it, or the most number of people who believe it, it must be true. It's sort of like the Colbertism for perception is reality. So let's talk about some wikialities for a second. The Great Wall of China is the only man-made object you can see from space. That's not true, but it sounds true. And people say it all the time. How many times you've been in a bar and people say something like that? Or my other favorite, the Eskimos have 27 words for snow. They don't have 27 words for snow. The Eskimos have one word for snow, and I believe it's snow. But people love to, and the story that goes behind that when I've heard it is hysterical. It's like, oh, you know, they live in the snow and they have all these romantic notions about snow. No, they don't. Like, I completely debunked. Snopes says some of this, but there's a lot of wikialities out there. Our problem now is objective truth and gaslighting. And so there is no amount of algorithmic control that's going to stop the gaslighting, and there's no amount of algorithmic control that's going to stop the disinformation campaigns. That's outside the realm of Facebook. That's outside the realm of Google. That's outside the realm of Twitter. Who is to say what is real and what is fake? Who is to say whose opinion is right or wrong? I have my own opinions. If you really want to get a sense of this, and I think all of you have done it, call one of your friends who's on the other side of the political spectrum and ask them about some objective truth, something that someone in a red state believes or someone in a blue state believes. Talk masks, talk the debate the other night. You will think you were watching a different debate from the person you were talking to. They will interpret the exact same sentence in a different way. And if you're a human being and you're going through that, and I'm not here to put a political spin on this. It actually doesn't matter for this example whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. You're on one side of the river, the other person's on the other side of the river. You see a log in the middle of the river and you describe it differently. You look up at the sky and you see a blue sky and they see a gray sky. And there's nothing you can do about it because objectively you don't agree on the facts to discuss. And so at that point, there isn't anything Twitter can do. There isn't anything Facebook can do. There isn't anything Google can do. People will believe what they want to believe. And there's very, very, very little you can do about that. Yeah, you know, Dale, that's interesting. Dale writes, I'm less afraid of random disinformation. These platforms provide unprecedented power for behavior influence. They do. They do. They do have an amazing ability to amplify, and that's because none of us are good critical thinkers when we're at our weakest moments. If you're in your echo chamber, you are in your comfort zone, and you're not likely to want to get out of it. You're pretty vulnerable to the comfort of the information. You'll blanket yourself in the comfort of the information you want to hear. And it is really, really hard to get someone out of that comfort zone. How likely are you to go and listen to the same story described from the opposing side? If you're a red state person, how likely are you to watch Rachel Maddow at 9 o'clock and consider that the right context for what you're interested in? If you're a blue state person, how likely are you to watch Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity tell you what you saw and heard today? It would make you incredibly uncomfortable. It makes people uncomfortable. That's what the whole concept of an echo chamber is. And so I don't know that Facebook or Google or Twitter can stop that kind of confirmation bias, where once your bias is confirmed, you're comfortable, and the minute your bias is challenged, you're uncomfortable and you leave. It's a human trait. Now, I guarantee that these tools have exacerbated this problem, and actually I will argue that social media writ large is probably the worst thing that has happened to humanity in a way that I don't think anyone thought was possible. The benefits, I'm a giant Facebook fan for the things it does well. We have a Facebook Messenger group called Core, and I get to see pictures of all of my family members. It's the core way that we communicate with one another. A lot of silly memes and probably politically incorrect phrases and inside jokes get put there. They're not to be shared with the public. They're not in any way to be shared with the public. So, no, Lisa Schwab, we are not doomed. We just aren't. We're not doomed. And Henry, I know you don't agree. I want to be wrong about this. Like I said, I'm a big Facebook fan for the thing it does well. And I used to be a monstrous Twitter fan. I used to say, and I've written about it, there's an article at shellypalmer.com, several articles about Twitter. Chris Sacca was all up in arms a few years back, and everybody was like, does advertising actually work, was the article I wrote. And what I meant was, Twitter had to suck, or TV advertising didn't work. Think about that for a second. Every television show, period, since you can remember, has everybody's Twitter handle on it. Every radio show, every podcast, every piece of communication that the media, professional media, wannabe professional media, soon to be professional media, anything that can have a Twitter handle on it has a Twitter handle associated with it. Twitter gets, I don't know, added up, I have no way to actually calculate it, hundreds of millions to billions of dollars of free advertising every year across all media. If any one of us, if any one of our products, if any one of our businesses was on every single show, 24 hours a day, every magazine ad, every newspaper ad, every online ad, every single TV, radio, and podcast, TV show, radio, and podcast. And all in, they have 330 million monthly users. A decade into this. The product has to suck. They should be the size of Facebook. Facebook doesn't get that kind of play. Google doesn't get that kind of play. Twitter, all day, all night, relentless advertising to go on Twitter. And the reason that it's not way, way bigger than it is that what's its value? When is Twitter going to be your first choice, your personal first choice for how you want to communicate with your friends, how you want to communicate with your team, how you want to communicate with your group? You'll broadcast on Twitter all day long. You'll put something out there, see if it grabs some likes. But when is it your first choice? Would you go to Instagram before that? Would you go to Facebook Messenger before that in a group that you had? Would you go to a Facebook group? Would you go to a LinkedIn group? Where would you go to your most important adepts, supplicants, followers, friends? Is Twitter even on that list? Probably not. And why? As a marketer, all day, tweeting all day long, trying to put memes out there, trying to get people excited, trying to motivate the bots to pay attention, of which there are too many to even contemplate. But if you were going to actually put a message out there, you personally, or you the business person, is that your first choice? So while I used to think Twitter was an amazing amplifier of voices, and it was a great leveler, and it made everybody equal under the eyes of Twitter. If you were clever, you had decent virality and enough volume and velocity on Twitter to get people's attention, no one was bigger than you. The difference between you and Kim Kardashian was just the number of followers, but not the influence, because you were famous to your own group. So if you had 150 followers, which is the average size of somebody's contact list, if you were going to have a wedding or a Sweet 16 party or an anniversary party or a bar bat mitzvah, there's probably 140 to 160 people on that list. 150 is a good guess. So the 150 people that you influence, okay, she influences a couple million more than you do. She doesn't know them. She can't activate them. You can activate the 150 people that follow you. They know you. So what an amazing amplifier. And they all know 150 people, and you're part of a subset of that. That was the cool part about Twitter when it started. now? Howling at the Moon. Yes, Jim Thomas, that's exactly right. Not the first choice. Twitter is a shouting place. Much like broadcasting, it feels one way in a multidimensional world. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think that is exactly what's going on. So when they're called to the Hill today, they're probably going to get a pass, and they're going to use the tools they use to sidestep the questions, and they're playing a different game. I would lovingly call our friends at Twitter and Facebook and Google the data elite. I don't believe that our elected officials have the intellectual framework, and I'm not saying they're not smart enough. I'm simply saying I don't believe they have the intellectual framework to understand the questions they're supposed to ask. There's too much political theater and not enough substance about what dangers are posed by the data elite, and they're literally playing in a different ballpark. Washington is one thing. What's going on in the world of data is something else altogether. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm happy to take your questions and your comments. I see that the chat is very active, and I'm glad that's true. What I want to do, and I will jump onto any of these questions as they come up. What I wanted to talk about a little bit was this article that I wrote a few years ago and has resurfaced. It was resurfaced by some people on Twitter, oddly enough, and then I thought to resurface the article and update it just a little bit. I don't know if any of you have read it, but it's at shellypalmer.com. We call it the Blue Disco Ball story, and I'd like to tell it to you for a minute and then get your reaction to it, because part of being a strategy hacker in the context of the word strategy hacker is to adopt business strategies and to discuss them and to adopt business strategies that will help you just be better at your job. And that's the whole goal of hanging out with me for an hour once a week. So in the spirit of making everybody a little bit better at their job, let me tell you the Blue Disco Ball story, and then let's discuss it. So the Blue Disco Ball story goes like this. I was either still in or just out of film school at NYU. This goes back long ago when the earth was actually cooling. I will not drop the name of the director under any circumstances, but it was my first major motion picture film set that I was ever on. And I was a production assistant, which I must tell you is the very lowest human being on the totem pole. You cannot be lower on the totem pole than a production assistant on a major motion picture, unless you're an assistant to a production assistant. I mean, this is as far down. My jobs were get coffee, deal with dry cleaning, run messages around to people, and keep my mouth shut, because I was going to see things I wasn't supposed to talk about. And I did my best to do all of those. I don't think any of you can imagine me keeping my mouth shut, but I promise you that I was trying my very, very best back then. So on my very first day of that very first job, there was a production meeting. And a production meeting, for those of you who are not in the film business, is a group of department heads where you have the director, the producer, the lighting director, probably the key grip, makeup and hair, just around everybody. If you've ever looked at a 5-minute long film credits and you see that there are sections, everyone who heads up those departments sits around a table. They talk about what has to happen. The director calls for, they're going through shots and scenes, and the director says, oh yeah, for this, scene 8, or whatever that scene number was, I need a 60-inch blue disco ball hanging on the set. And the producer just says, 60-inch blue disco ball, got it. Meeting breaks up. No one says another. Things go on. This meeting goes on for another half hour. Get back to the production trailer, and I'm the intern to an assistant producer who was tasked with getting this 60-inch blue disco ball. And he picks up the phone, and he makes one phone call to a fabricator, to a rental shop, after checking with props that they didn't have a 60-inch blue disco ball. And he gets a price for $10,000 to make this thing. They need it in 2 days, and it needs to be on the set for a shoot in 2 days. So, remarkably, he says to me, look, 10 grand sounds like they don't want to do it. So here's a list of like 6 other fabricators. And you can go to the Yellow Pages. Yes, it's that long ago. And find some other fabricators if these guys can't cover it. But I want you to just get on the phone and make sure this $10,000 is a legit price quote, because I don't want to get in trouble for spending 10 grand on something that, going to cost us less. Now, this thing is $50 if you can find it in a store. But I could only find white ones and red ones and gold ones. I couldn't find a blue one. Not knowing any better, I called all the other fabricators. A couple guys came back an hour or so later with a $10,000-ish price quote. The 3 or 4 vendors that were willing to do it in the time frame all wanted 10 grand. And again, this is a $50 object, even back then. So my guy feels like he's vindicated, and the assistant producer places the order with his vendor and tells him that the deadline is about 6 hours earlier than the actual deadline, and it's about 2 days out. And I questioned him that I really wanted to know, like, man, this is already an impossible deadline. Like, how is it you are shaving 6 hours off? And he looked me straight in the eye and said, Shelly, you don't understand anything. Trust me, this is going to work. I was okay. So this story should be over at that point. Guy's going to show up with the ball. Life's going to be good. The deadline comes and goes. The false deadline comes and goes. No disco ball. About an hour before the real deadline for this ball arriving, the director starts throwing a massive temper tantrum in the middle of the set with the executive producer, the actual line producer, a couple other people, and he was on a tear. And I was there hearing it, and it was absolutely insane what was going on. And out of nowhere, the studio property master walks by and just happens to say, what's all the commotion about? The director screaming says, I don't have a blue disco ball. We're going to have to cancel this shoot. And, this is good. And he just is going crazy. And the guy says, well, what do you need? He says, I need a huge disco ball, like blue one, right in the middle of the set. I'd never heard the term huge. I'd only ever heard 60-inch. The property master is getting pretty seriously screamed at, even for interrupting. He says, is the ball going to be in the shot? And the director looks at the script and looks at the script supervisor and the producer, and then screams some really untoward stuff that you as a manager would not want to scream at a worker. And the answer was no, the ball wasn't going to be in the shot. As calmly as I've ever heard a human being ever respond to anyone who was brutally yelling at them, prop guy says, what are you trying to accomplish? The director is stunned silent for a second and gets really red in the face. And I thought I was going to yell again, but he didn't. He composed himself and he said, well, I need blue dots dancing all over the set, like from a disco ball. The lighting guy, the props guy, quietly, like so quietly said, well, let me make sure I understand. You need blue lights dancing all over the set, and you don't care what the source is, but you want it to feel like a disco ball is making them. He goes, yeah, it's exactly what I want. And he's screaming. He goes, guy walks over, picks up a phone, calls the props department, asks if they have them to bring up a disco ball. Didn't say what color, just bring up a disco ball. And they brought up a white mirrored disco ball that was maybe 12 inches. And they hung it, and he said to the grip, go grab some blue gels, shoot it at this thing. And they covered a straight up pin spot with really deep blue gels, and magically there are blue lights dancing all over the set. Literally dancing all over the set. "15 minutes into this, a truck rolls up with a massive box. 30 minutes before the deadline, there is a massive box with a obviously 60-inch disco ball in it They had already rigged this disco ball. They'd already shot the pin spot at it. The director had already approved what it was going to be. The cast wasn't due out of makeup for 3 hours. Literally wasn't due out of makeup for 3 hours. The blue disco ball was sent to the props department. To my knowledge, it is still there unopened 40 years later. To my knowledge. Might be 42 years now, actually. There were many lessons learned that day, but I call this entire genre, if you will, of business problem the blue disco ball story. What caused this article to get written was that a vice president at an SVP actually, at a big corp, somewhere in my world, called up and ordered a blue disco ball from me, metaphorically. We don't sell them, because the next question out of my mouth is, what are you trying to accomplish? Let's go over the lessons one after the other, if we can, from the blue disco ball story. So the number one question is, or the number one question you would ever ask is, what are you trying to accomplish? If you have a vendor and you say to the vendor, I need a 60-inch blue disco ball, vendor's going to give you a price and deliver it on time and on budget. That's what vendors do. That's how a vendor keeps their job. I want to be your preferred vendor. I want to be in the top of your list. I want to be in the short list of the top 3 human beings you would call to buy something that I sell. Of course I'm going to make it happen for you on time and on budget. That's just what I'm going to do. But if you don't actually need a blue disco ball, that's a dumb thing to ask for. You could fill in the blank. I need a talent release that restricts people's usage to only YouTube. Sounds reasonable. Is that what you really need? I would be asking an intellectual property lawyer about that rather than saying what I need. It's like, hey, we're about to put some stuff online. YouTube, don't know where else it's going. What do I need to cover myself? What am I trying to accomplish? What is the actual goal? The crazy thing that happened with the schedule, I really, really wanted to get into back then and ultimately did. And I sat with the assistant producer at the wrap party, the guy that was my boss, and I asked him, why did you cut 6 hours off of the real deadline? Like, it was impossible. He said, I wanted these guys to know if they were going to charge me rush pricing, that I was going to make it a rush. They could do this in 2 days. I've used them before to do similar stuff. Day and a half, that hurt. And since they were basically telling me they didn't want to do the job by giving me a $10,000 quote for basically $1,000 worth of work, I thought I would give them a little shot in the teeth and see how much they wanted to work and how much they wanted to keep me happy. So that was my little shot back across the bow. I'm like, wow, that's a little subtle for me. I would have thought you would have said to him, guys, you got 2 days, do it for $5,000. He goes, wasn't my place to do that. Wasn't his vendor relationship. It was just a vendor he worked with. So that little backstabbing stuff, that I find ridiculous, and I have tried to ferret that out in every place I possibly could. And where we've been thwarted with that over the years is as when orders have gone to procurement, and procurement lays out line items, and you are forced to deal with the line items, that really gets to be problematic. So not to beat a dead horse, I think if you get a chance to read the Blue Disco Ball story, which is the middle management error that vendors love most. It is my favorite error. I just don't let my clients make them, and I don't think you should let your clients make them either, because it's not good for you if they do actually do that. There's also, this week, I wrote a follow-up article which is called Solutions Provider versus Vendor, or Vendor versus Solutions Provider. Every vendor says they're a solutions provider, and all solutions providers definitely don't consider themselves vendors. And the subtle difference is that a vendor will do what they're told, and and most vendors will tell you that they are solutions providers, and they will ask if they can help you better. But if they're trying to win a bidding war through procurement, their hands are tied too. Whereas a consulting salesperson or a solutions provider will almost always try to help you through to the goal, to achieve the business goal. And it ends up costing a little more money, but it's cheaper. And what I mean by that is you may put more cash out into the world than you think that solution is worth. But in the long term, as an investment, it's going to be the right solution. And I have a phrase that has evolved over the years that we don't say out loud very often. We will get a call from a client. We will get a call from a client, and the client will say, I need you to do blank. We'll go through our consultative process, and we will do blank to their exact specification. Sometimes we'll do 3 versions of a project. What they've asked for, what we think they need based on what they've said, and what we know they actually need. We do that very often. And they usually pick the one that we know they need. But every once in a while, they pick the one they asked for exactly. I want a green suit with brass buttons and giant lapels and big white cuffs. Really? Where are you going to wear that? Don't worry about it. That's what I need. 1 hour after delivery, we get the call. Okay, what we really need, and the phrase we use is, there's never time and money to do it right, but there always seems to be time and money to do it over. Fact of life. So when I say a solutions provider will save you that second round, if you are a buyer, ask the right question, you're going to get the right answer. If you're a seller, do your client a favor and don't be dead right, but fight for it a little bit and win a blue disco ball, if you will. So I would love for you to send me at Shelly@ShellyPalmer.com. I would love for you to send me your blue disco ball story, because I really want to accumulate these and put them together. I'm really stoked about building up a fairly decent repository of blue disco ball stories and case studies that go along with it. I've heard a lot of them in the last couple of weeks. People have been kind enough to respond on the article. There's a place at the bottom where you can send us a story. And I would absolutely love to hear yours, because I know you've got them. Jeff Ratner, what's your question here? So, to connect the dots here, what is Congress trying to get from Facebook in today's questioning? They'd like Facebook to, in their mind, be unbiased, get rid of all the hate. They'd like Facebook to be this, perfect place that we can all live happily ever after. To be fair, if we are very honest with ourselves, and Jeff, this is something that I deeply personally believe. I don't think Facebook is the cause of our problems, or Twitter, or Google, or Donald Trump. Sorry for the politics. I think all of these are a reflection. Facebook has 2.7 billion registered users. 2.7 billion. There are roughly 4 billion people on the entire internet. The entire internet. 2/3 of the internet is registered to Facebook. That's not a place where people of one kind gather. That is a mirror being held up to us. That's a mirror held up to us. So if you see hate, and you see anti-Semitism, and you see racism, and you see things that make you sick to your stomach, then look in the mirror and ask yourself, where does it come from? To go to Facebook and say, you have to stop this, you have to stop the disinformation. Really? Who's putting it out there? Bad people. Okay. There are bad people everywhere. We live in a world that's a really tough place. You want to know how tough it is? Try get a job right now. You want to know how tough it is? Try and feed your family right now. Want to know how tough it is? It's not. There's no one that owes you anything anywhere. All Facebook is doing is holding a digital mirror up to all of us, and Google too. and Twitter too. I am not happy with what I see. And so what should you do as an individual? What can you do? Well, random acts of kindness would be awesome. Considering your words would be amazing. So-and-so's an idiot. No, probably not. So-and-so did something idiotic. Is that semantics? Yeah, but words are weapons. So calling me an idiot, I'm on the defensive. Telling me I did something a little stupid? Well, what did I do? Could I have done something better? There are algorithmic issues with Facebook, but their outcomes and incentives are aligned to be accretive to their shareholders. That's what they are. They're a publicly traded company, and they work for the people who own them. Anything that Google does is accretive to the shareholders of Alphabet. Anything that Twitter does is accretive to the shareholders of Twitter. That is going to be how they do what they do. They're incentivized to do that. The outcomes will reflect that. So if you don't want them to do that, then you're going to have to either outlaw that, saying it's not good for the world, you're going to leave them alone, or there have to be better outcomes. You know, people talk about media as being good or bad, left or right, true or false. I don't want to say fake news because I don't want to talk about it that way. The media is, of course, rigged, but not the way it's been spoken about. Every single news outlet has a P&L. Every one of them. This one included. What does that mean? That means that we all of us need ratings. All of us need ratings. And what do those ratings look like? We're getting the highest number of human beings to circle around us and engage with our content, either on a pay-per-view basis, or the halo of our content is being sold to an advertiser who is enriching us that way, and that's accretive to our shareholders. Or, in our case, it's we bring a community together, and when someone in that community feels like we would be the right consulting firm for their project, they think about us. So we're top of mind. We want to be recent and available to a decision, an evidence-based decision about the services and goods that we provide. So we're looking for ratings too. Not exactly the way that an MSNBC or a Fox News channel would. We're not looking for willy-nilly ratings. We're actually looking for a small group of really smart people. They're looking for a giant group of anybody who buys commodities and packaged goods and cars and pharma, because they have to sell that audience to an advertiser, package it and sell it. That's the outcome that they're incentivized to provide. In case you're wondering, in case anybody's wondering, the way you get this done is not by having people agree on camera. Global warming is warm, yes, and the planet heats up, and it's terrible. And in the very long term, it's going to be really bad for... You're already asleep. You get somebody who doesn't believe global warming exists and someone who passionately believes it does, and they have a fist fight on camera. And that train wreck, you can't take your eyes off of. You ever want to win a Twitter war? I got an easy way for you to do it. Take the most subtle, most intellectually difficult problem you can possibly imagine, one with immense complexities, and make it binary. Take the wrong side. You will win the Twitter war. You won't win the argument. You will win the Twitter war. How do you win the Twitter war? Well, your outcomes would be the highest number of retweets, the highest number of new followers, and the highest amount of engagement. Because the people who agree with you are going to be all over you, and the people who disagree with you are going to be all over you. That's perfect. That's the entire media business. The job of media is to be seen, and the job of a good media person is to craft a package of media that will specifically attract an audience that delivers an outcome. Twitter's outcome, accretive value to Twitter shareholders. Facebook's outcome, more money for Facebook's shareholders, and Google's outcome, accretive to Google's shareholders. End of story. Doesn't get any different than that. Never going to be any different than that. That is the rigging that we have in the media business and the technology business and the every other business where communication is part of the product. It's not great. If you would like to watch unbiased news, as unbiased as you can get it, Bloomberg tends to be less biased because people who make financial decisions tend to use it. The Bloomberg terminal tends to put a lot of facts out as quickly as they get them. NPR, I think that's pretty biased. C-SPAN, they point a camera inside the House of Representatives and inside the Senate. They just point a camera and they let it run. You want to see what's happening in the Senate today? If they're in session? They do it for the House of Commons too, which is fun. Those guys know how to have a good time. That's unbiased. That's what it is. Whatever you're looking at, that's what it is. So, I think realistically, hey there, Darren, how are you? Realistically, we're not going to solve. We're just not going to solve for this. And so whatever they're trying to accomplish on the Hill, they're going to fail. Two reasons. One, the guys on the West Coast are way smarter than the guys in Washington when it comes to what they're doing with data and why, and their end game isn't the same. And actually, no matter what rules are imposed, no matter what they are, as long as they know what those rules are, they will get around them because they're playing a different game. Anywho, what else can we tell everyone? It is 3:56. I want to take a couple more questions. Brian, do they contribute to someone who might be teetering on mental illness and help pushing them along? I tell you what, Brian, I'm not qualified to answer that question, but I think about it a lot. I do. And the human cost to the noise and misinformation and the availability, the way we can actually touch this stuff now, it's palpable, it's physical, it's real. It must be having an impact, and I don't know what that is. And again, I'm just not qualified to weigh in on that. But I feel like these are important questions to ask. And by the way, that's why I think everyone here, all of you who are listening right now, I believe in the depth of my soul, this is a time for you not to pass this off to someone else. Get involved. You can do that. All of the information is online. There are any number of think tanks. There are any number of resources that you can get to. You can become an expert in this, and you can form your own opinions, which will be the best opinion you can possibly form. And everybody here listening, I know for a fact, has one unique quality that other people may not. Every one of you has the capability to hold two opposing thoughts in your head at the same time. I know you do, because everybody who I speak to and everybody who reaches out to me has the ability to do that. And everyone has been super respectful. Even when they think I'm wrong, I've received nothing but respectful back and forth. So look, go out there and learn about this. Learn about it yourself and get good at it. And then help other people think it through. The big problem is data, not misinformation. The misinformation gets controlled when the data gets controlled. Bots are a problem. Absolutely. Technology is a problem. Absolutely. But it's also the solution. It absolutely is. Let's see. First three tell Steve Bradbury. Yep. What else do we see here? Yeah. I think you guys are 100% right. Look, I'm very happy that everybody showed up today. What a wonderful opportunity to spend a little time with you. Thank you so much for literally spending this hour with me. We, every day, Monday through Thursday at 11:05 and 11:35, have our salons. You are all welcome to join. I hope you will. We just talk about what's going on during the day, and you'll bump into old friends, and you'll meet some new people, and you'll learn a little, and you'll teach a little. Also, every Wednesday, I'm going to be doing this. We're going to be adding production value. I might add a guest or two. We're going to keep trying to learn how to do this better and better and better, because I think there is a very clear future to communication post-COVID. And I think we're all going to need to learn some skills that maybe we're not all so great at right now. I'm learning. This is my opportunity to just try, and I really appreciate you putting up with me for an hour. Any feedback, Shelly@ShellyPalmer.com, would really be appreciated. You can DM me at Shelly Palmer on Twitter. And with that, I will thank you all very, very much for joining today, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.